would like to officially welcome everybody to promoting a positive vision for recycling in Muskegon County. It is our virtual town hall and it is August 29, 2023. And this webinar is being produced by West Michigan Environmental Action Council, or otherwise known as WEMIAC. And I am very honored to work for WEMIAC as their Lakeshore outreach organizer, based in Muskegon County, working remotely in Whitehall, and working with groups on clean energy and other issues, all the way down to Saugatuck, the lovely Lakeshore. And I think it's really cool that I'm working with WEMIAC. I have a long history with them, and WEMIAC kind of lends itself to We, Me, and Act, and founded in 1968, helped to pass the Sand Dune Protection Act, has worked very considerably on PFAS pollution and more, some very important school programs, Teach for the Watershed, Zero Waste. Headquarters have been in Grand Rapids, and certainly the new expanded presence that I'm heading up since 2020, and we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization. And as part of this project, we are working with municipalities all across the county, community organizations and businesses to improve recycling in Muskegon County. It has been brought to our attention numerous times, and me as a personal resident and a lot of folks here, that there are things that we could do to improve recycling. And so that's what this is all about. We have been meeting informally with local elected officials, representatives of businesses, the Conservation District, Muskegon Rotary folks, since 2021, and this has been supported by the Community Foundation for Muskegon County and Emmet Aerospace. Most of the meetings have been virtual and some of them have been in person, but there have been many, many meetings. And I think it's important to note that we did not know this was happening, but we did this prior to some recent changes to our state solid waste law, Part 115, which is going to require counties to provide some level of recycling access and services based on their per capita population. So we were kind of ahead of the game here in Muskegon County, or organizing our local municipalities and folks, people who are really very interested and motivated to make some improvements. So for the last 2 years, we've been working on a feasibility study. This is supported by the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes Energy. It's called EGO, to advance a vision for the future. So the idea has been to build on a study done by Muskegon County government in 2017, where they looked at the current state of recycling and people's views on recycling, and some recommendations were made about using that information to provide support for some improvements. And our feasibility study is kind of building on that, updating the information piece of this, the market analysis, what's the current state of recycling and what are the services and programs, and then updating the other piece in the study, which is, well, what program improvements should we be considering to advance forward? And as part of that, we now have a current analysis of the recycling infrastructure. That means things like drop-off centers and collection facilities and places where people can take recycled materials. And we also have a better idea of the current market in the county. We have a list of recommendations on what infrastructure we might want to see constructed in the county, such as central collection centers and rural drop-off centers. There's kind of a common idea called hub and spoke, where you have a central collection facility, and then all of the areas, especially in the rural areas, are served by drop-off centers. So there's comprehensive coverage throughout the county. We also have provided, this group has provided recommendations for better collaboration. And you'll hear a little bit more about that from one of the panelists. Education, having a consistent educational message so people know why to recycle, how to recycle, where to recycle, and then the economic opportunities that there might be with using recycled materials to produce new goods. So we have a completed feasibility study report. It is at WMEAC.org. It's at the On the Lakeshore tab. So there's tabs across our website, and you can find that study at that tab. And we also have a community survey where we talk to residents about, do they recycle? What do they recycle? Where do they recycle? Would they like more information? Do they have, what thoughts do they have? And we encourage people to take that survey and help circulate it. It's also found at that very same place, WMEAC.org. And so today's meeting agenda is really kind of exciting. We're going to hear from two success stories first. Cedar Creek Township Recycling Center. We're going to be hearing from Goodwill Industries. We're going to be hearing from Emmet County up north. They have a very comprehensive recycling program that's considered to be one of the top in the states. We're going to be hearing about those new state requirements and what that means for counties. And then Matt Farah from the county is going to talk about, the county government's role going forward. We have Doug Wood, who is the interim chair of our new leadership team, which is one of the recommendations of the feasibility study, to establish a team to guide implementation of the recommendations and keep the vision and enthusiasm for recycling going forward. And then we are very fortunate to hear from Matt Flechter, and he's going to talk about, he's from Eagle, he's going to talk about the economic development opportunities that are available, and things that Muskegon County might want to find out more about. So we're going to do this where each panelist goes kind of seamlessly to the next. And so we're going to get started with Linda Arts first.
Thank you. Well, enough about me. Just go to the next slide. There. Thank you. We started our recycling program actually somewhat by accident, although I have to say I was an advocate, an ardent recycler myself. So, but as our citizens began to come into the township once the recycling stopped due to Republic closing down, we began to realize we had to do something. It was pretty clear that as more and more of the citizens came to our township hall, you just have to begin to respond. Would you mind going to the next slide, please? We joke here in Cedar Creek Township, we're pretty close. We're on the east side of the county, and it's just about 25 minutes to every place in Muskegon County, except for Meyer. It's 15 minutes to Meyer to recycle your plastic grocery bags. So we brought this to our board we talked about the sheer number of the people that were coming into the office to say, could you please do something about recycling? The board was pretty responsive. So we then decided, okay, what's our next step? If this number of people were willing to drive all the way into Republic to recycle their waste, their plastic, glass, and paper goods, that means they're pretty serious about this. So what can we do? What's the best, most receptive thing that we as a township could do to support them? And it seemed like the option for us would be to look at an Eagle grant. So at that point, we began to explore that option. And we look at, there's a picture here on the screen of Little Cedar Creek. It's beautiful. Cedar Creek is beautiful during all 4 seasons. And we talked to our citizens, actually, when they came in. We did an exploratory survey about what people liked about Cedar Creek. And they talked to us about how beautiful it was, and how when they came in here, it was the calming effect of just the actual nature, how they felt they could just breathe when they got here. They loved the forests, the rivers, the lakes, the streams. Well, part of that was keeping Cedar Creek beautiful. And one of the ways to do that is to keep the trash out of those particular places. So we felt it was important then to be as responsible as we could in doing what we could to follow up on that. Next slide, please. We looked, when we were writing our grant, we looked at, or the possibility of the grant, we looked at our existing township hall. And we knew that we had the space there that we could put our recycling center. So with the help of Muskegon County Department of Public Works, and Matt Farah was wonderful. He's on this board with us tonight. He helped us write this grant, and we were so grateful for his help. We were able to apply for and qualify for this. And the grant was actually for a recycling pilot program for rural townships. And that's important to note, that it's a rural township, because Cedar Creek has approximately 3,200 people. And you need to keep that in mind, because I'm going to call this program the little engine that could, because I'm going to consider this program very, very successful, in that we have worked so hard to make this happen. When Eagle did award us this grant, which is just short, you can see, of $66,000 in the fall of 2019, and it happened just as COVID was beginning. The grant was paid $75,000, or 75% of the project by Eagle, and Cedar Creek covered the other 25%. But keeping in mind that it started out slowly because COVID was just beginning, and it hit pretty hard during the recycling, as the pandemic hit. It really was a slow start when no one quite knew what to do as the pandemic was underway, and we were wearing masks. I would only allow, we had the office closed at the transfer station. I was the only one that was allowed out there to accept recycling. So it was really difficult in the beginning. We made it work though. Next slide, please. Our unit is a single stream unit. It accepts plastic, glass, cardboard, and paper. We have another bin that's metal recycling, which we haul to Padnos. One of the things that we did do, we really researched this in the beginning. What were we going to do? Where were we going to haul this? And we decided that we would take this to Kent County because we knew that they had recycling partners. We visited their facility. We watched what they did with their recycling. So we know that we called our recycling hauler, and we knew that it was going to cost us $350 per haul. They've been really good, and they've kept that for our 2 years. They've kept that same amount, and it generally costed about $100 per each tipping fee. To date, we've diverted nearly 8 tons of recycling from the landfill, which I think is wonderful. I mean, when I say little engine that could, I mean little engine that could, because that is a lot for a small township to keep out of a landfill. And we talked with our transfer station attendants before we set pricing, and we do have to charge our citizens for their recycling products. And we talked to the attendant, and we said, what would you charge for this amount of recycling, and what would you charge for this amount of solid waste? So we kept the prices uniform. And so no one is terribly upset, and we pretty much know if the citizen is not willing to pay for this recycling, they're not going to put it in the recycling bin. They're going to throw it in the solid waste. So most of the people that we have who come to our facility are generally committed recyclers. We're absolutely certain of that, and we watch the numbers of citizens grow over time. So we're really pretty happy about that. And the only thing that we've noticed in our time frame is we can't get a handle on the exact number of months in between each haul. So I've not been able to keep a good track on that. Next slide, please. We consider this program to be break even as our last date that we tracked this. So for a small township, and I think we thought in the beginning, this would be something that we would lose a considerable amount of money on. So I consider this to be an absolute success. And again, we did not track our metal recycling, so we know that the money that we haul to Padnos, we are now going to be tracking that. So we know that that's an extra income for us. So we know that also that there seem to be more people coming in this last 2.5 months. The bin is almost full, which is really exciting. That's the shortest time span that we've had in this very, very, in fact, I've had to hire summer help. So that's a good and a bad thing. That'll put us in a deficit spending pattern. So it's good that we can hire some summer help, but it's also bad that we go into deficit spending. The other kind of negative thing is that this is not a program that people want to necessarily do on a volunteer basis. And I guess that's because who wants to do every Saturday at the transfer station? So, and I think that, this is one of our favorite little volunteers here. Her name's Claire. And the other thing that we've noticed is most of our recyclers seem to be more senior individuals. And I think we also have young families whose children, and I know that in Holton Public Schools, they do teach some recycling there. So I've heard the parents come, their children come and they said, my children are making us recycle. So, which I think is pretty interesting as well. So those are predominantly the people that come to the transfer. They're there every age, but those are the two categories of people in particular that we've noticed. And I think that's, again, I think really this is the little engine that could, and it's all designed to keep Cedar Creek beautiful. Thank you.
Nick, I think you are next, right?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, my name is Nick Carlson. I am the Business Development Director for Goodwill Industries of West Michigan. And one thing that a lot of people don't know about Goodwill is that we are not able to sell every single thing that we get in through our retail channels. About 30% of everything we get sells in our stores locally, and about 40% of what we get sells through export markets. And then we're left with about 30% of our material to try and figure out what else to do with. And if you can go to the next slide, please. These are a couple of the projects that we're working on right here in West Michigan. And one thing that I would like to note is that Goodwill Industries of West Michigan is seen as one of the leaders in the entire country in terms of finding solutions for difficult to manage materials. I'm going to talk about all four of these different innovations that we're piloting here in Muskegon. The first one is Hydroblocks. The second is our Good Glass project. The third will be our Dyka Wood project. And then the fourth will be our nanocellulose project. So let me start with Hydroblocks. If you want to go to the next slide. Oh, I might have skipped one here. I guess I'll start with this one. This is our Good Glass project. So all of the glass that comes through our stores that we're unable to sell, we still have to find something to do with it. And what we launched recently, as early as this past August, I believe it was August 7th was our first launch date. We've been taking all of the colored glass that we received that we're unable to sell, breaking it down, running it through tumblers, and selling it as craft media in our Whitehall store. So far, 50% of everything that we've put on the sales floor has sold, and we've made over $500 selling broken pieces of glass that we've tumbled. And we've got more of that material that we're going to be moving out to all of our stores in not too distant future. And then if you look at the bottom right picture, these are, we're working with a company called American Glass Mosaics to take our clear glass where they're going to be able to, we're going to be running tests on them using that clear glass to add color to it, and then making backsplashes for countertops and pools. And that's being done right here in Spring Lake. So we're working with them to be able to take all of our glass materials and keep it out of landfills. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. And this is our Dyka Wood project. So Dyka is a company based in Israel that has developed a proprietary process where they can take wood sawdust and then add an all-natural bonder to it, run it through a press machine, and stamp out new products. And then when they harden or when they dry at room temperature, they're back as hard as wood. And these are some pictures of some of the different samples of the materials that are being created with this material. Goodwill gets an awful lot of wood products. Picture your grandma's old hutch that she doesn't want, or when everybody got rid of their TV cabinets that everybody used to have and no one has anymore. We got every single one of them in the entire country. And nobody wanted to buy them, so they became waste sources. But what we've found is this company in Israel where we're working on putting together a partnership deal where we're going to be able to take our wood product and we're going to invest in the machinery here in Muskegon where we'll be able to grind up that wood product, make new products, and sell them. And we're speaking with companies like Hayworth and companies like Wilson Sporting Goods on what products we can make for them using recycled furniture. Go ahead and go to the next slide. In this slide, this one is our Harvest Nano program. Goodwill gets about 30% of all the textiles that Goodwill gets are made out of cotton. And cotton is an excellent source of what's called cellulose. It's found in every plant material, but cotton in particular is made up of 90% cellulose. And we send an awful lot of materials overseas when they're at their end of use domestically. We are working on a campaign to keep that stuff locally and convert it into cellulose and nanocellulose-based materials. With nanocellulose it's kind of a futuristic material that is 4 times harder than steel and 2 times harder than carbon fiber. And it's being used across the globe as an additive in various products to make them lighter and stronger. So when you look at that bicycle in the bottom left corner, there's components made entirely out of nanocellulose, so that those items become a much lighter product, but hold up to that same a rigorous level of tensile strength. They're even being used in automobiles in Japan for various applications. Not the entire car that's there, but parts of that car are made out of plant-based cellulose materials. And then you can see the Kevlar vests up at the top there being used in military applications to make protection lighter and more maneuverable. I'm not sure. Go ahead and. I'm not sure if I have another slide. I should. Can you go back maybe to that very first slide I had with the hydroblocks? For some reason, that hydroblock slide is not in here, but leave it right there, and I'll explain what this is. So hydroblocks. This is a joint venture partnership that we established with a third party called Hydroblocks, where we're able to take broken laundry baskets, Tupperware bowls, toys that are broken, water bottles, things like that, and be able to take that material and convert it into stormwater drainage tile systems that you can see on your right-hand side there. If I had the other pictures on here, you'd be able to see all the different drainage applications for green stormwater management, to move water using recycled plastic content. We actually are very close to launching our operations here in Muskegon. We have a 90,000 square foot facility on Olthoff Drive, where this is going to be manufactured, and we're waiting for one more machine and the electrical hookups. So we should be within the next month launching. And once that happens, we'll be able to keep all but 100% of our plastic waste out of the landfill and be made into new products right here in Muskegon. All of these things will be done right here in Muskegon in that 90,000 square foot space as we launch it. And we're super thankful for the work that Eagle has done in their next cycle program to help us gain access to capital. And then also the work that the Michigan Recycling Coalition does in terms of connecting people to different opportunities and solutions. None of this would be happening if it wasn't for the excellent work that they're all doing. And with that, you can skip ahead and I'll introduce Lindsay over at Emmet County.
Thanks. Should I just go ahead? Hi, everyone. It's Lindsay Walker from Emmet County Recycling. Can you hear me okay? Thumbs up? Okay, great. We are a 30-year resource recovery program situated in the tip of the mitten here on the northwest coast of the Lower Peninsula. And I have been with Emmet County Recycling as market development, commercial accounts, and recycling outreach since 2007. And so I'm honored to be here today because I love to talk about our program, and we're very invested here at Emmet County in seeing the recycling rate raise in Michigan, and also to demonstrate some of the models of how we've been able to accomplish our program over the past 30 years. Next slide. So here's where we started way back in the early 1990s, late 1980s. This was the old township dump. From there, we kind of grew into a waste transfer station, to a drop-off station for cardboard and milk jug recycling. Never doubt that a small group of concerned citizens can make a big change in their community, because that's the only thing that ever has. Quoting our friend Margaret Mead on that notable quotable. And so as a young child growing up in the city of Petoskey in the 1980s, I remember when the city used to pick up our garbage and haul it to the local township dump. And all of us in Michigan at that time, no matter where you were or what age you were, we all used to have those local township dumps, right? And in the 1980s and late 80s, we changed that to solid waste transfer stations. And this is where Emmet County kind of came into the role in the early 90s of being that sited location. We don't have a landfill in Emmet County, and so the closest landfill in proximity to us is Muskegon County, about 46 miles due east of our facility. And so, yeah, back in the day, this is how we started, with this little transfer station. We are sited on a township dump. And now, fast forward to 40 years later, the city of Petoskey and our 6 other municipalities and townships now pay for my neighbors and my recycling at the curb. So this has been a shift in policy and values, as our communities value the opportunity to recycle and pay as you throw. The more garbage you create, the more you're going to pay to dispose of it. So we occupy currently 10 acres on a 40-acre site. Next slide. Our policy model, in the absence of both federal and state policy to incentivize diversion over recycling, we have created a very strong model. And that includes, so this began in 1990 when Emmet County Department of Public Works hired their first director. So Elisa Seltzer came to us in 1990 and immediately worked to implement policies and procedures that would incentivize recycling and a future of recycling and reducing and reusing over disposal. So our policy model, basically, in short, is our solid waste ordinance. We have a policy called flow control and a federal policy called pay as you throw. So these were all policy tools that we help to fund our program. Our solid waste plan gave us the ability to plan and design our goals and objectives, which everybody in the state is going to have the opportunity to begin that process or revisit your current solid waste planning for materials management planning. So in our program, we have flow control. So all the garbage that's generated in Emmet County has to come through our recycling facility. When you control the flow of garbage, you also control the flow of diversion opportunities of that garbage. So our solid waste plan gave us the ability to plan and design our goals and objectives. And here, our residents and businesses are given a financial incentive to recycle by our solid waste ordinance by flow control. Pay as you throw is a federal EPA program, which says that the more garbage you throw away, the more you're going to pay. In Emmet County, we've created a program where we figure about 75% of your residential discards are recyclable through our program. And then another 25% or 15 to 20% is mostly organics and divertible through backyard composting with us, and other opportunities for keeping those organics out of landfills. So part of our policy allows us to have a recycling program of the 3 C's. So we talk about our program being convenient, comprehensive, and cost-effective. Because we control the flow of garbage and we know what the price is to dispose in Emmet County, we can set our pricing, incentivize pricing for recycling and other diversion opportunities. So we always try to price recycling under the cost of disposal to incentivize that for our community. And also, our solid waste ordinance requires all the waste haulers to register with us as a hauler in Emmet County. In doing so, that helps to provide funds for our organization. We generate the majority of our revenue here in Emmet County with tip fees on garbage at our transfer station. We also sell our commodities and our recyclables. We have pay for fee services available. So that's kind of how we fund our organization. Obviously, it's much more complicated than this, but what I can actually get in a 5-minute presentation is only can be reviewed today. So much more opportunities for follow-up and learning more about Emmet County's program later. Okay, next photo, next slide. Here's a current view of our recycling facility. We operate on a 40-acre site. We only use 10 acres of that 40 acres. Of that, 6 acres is for our wood recycling and yard waste composting and food scrap composting facility. So we are a county-owned and operated facility, including a solid waste transfer station, a materials recovery facility. We are dual stream. I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. We are a yard waste and food scrap composting facility registered with EGO. We are a bulky recyclables drop-off, a hazardous recyclables drop-off, and more, serving 3 counties in rural northern Michigan. Currently, we process the recyclables for Sheboygan County to the north of us, and for Presque County, where the Onaway landfill is located, due east of us. We previously, in the past 15 to 20 years, have worked with Charlevoix County recycling program, as well as Otsego County. So both of those communities now work with private sector GFL and their single stream recycling system by drop off only. So no curbside recycling services in those communities, but they do have drop off. So we are an entirely self-funded as an enterprise fund with no general tax dollars supporting our operations since 1991. At Emmet County Recycling, we talk about ourselves as the educators. We're the drivers or the haulers. We're the recycling processing facility. We're the market development people. And we are also responsible for just connecting our community. Our facility is known as like a super drop-off center. If you're ever considering disposing of anything in Emmet County, we're kind of like the go-to center for all of that. All of our staff, we have about 30 employees throughout our facilities operations, including drivers, sorters, and includes 3 shiny new robots from AMP Robotics. So those are part of our crew of hard workers in our facility. So other things, really we're just a very popular program in our area. People are very invested in recycling. Whenever you come up into the Emmet County area on any given Monday through Friday, you can see recycling carts out to the curb. We provide commercial recycling services. So I work with all the 400 businesses and the Petoskey and Harbor Springs, Alanson, and some of our smaller townships around the denser populations of our county, mostly in the southern part of Emmet County. And so very popular program, and people are very invested. So it's very common to see us at 4th of July parades and serving on city council in the city of Petoskey. So we have many overlaps in our staff and our programs reach within our community. Next slide. So like I explained, we are a dual stream system. And the reason that we are dual stream, it's been an evolution, of course. So back in the early 1990s, we started out as a source separated recycling program, like many of you throughout the state of Michigan and across the nation. The most common commodities or recyclables we generated back in the day was your cardboard, your milk jugs. And as products began to be developed more and recycling of those commodities came online in the state of Michigan, we've been able to systematically start to add more and more materials and investment into our facility, whether that be on the collection or the processing end of things. So in 2010, we went from source separated to dual stream. And at the time we had bought all of our equipment from a recycling facility in Outagamie County, Wisconsin. That facility was going single stream. So we bought all their equipment for pennies on the dollar, broke it down, shipped it over the Mackinac Bridge, stored it for a year while we built our new facility around recycled equipment. So we're very proud of the fact that over the past 13 years, we've been recycling unrecycled stuff. And then the last investment of about $2.2 million happened in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. And we installed 3 robots, extended our pre-sort line on our dual stream on our mixed container side of things. And so as a result, we now have a a facility that is relying less on human labor and has driven down the cost of labor by installing robots and doing really good sorting and providing nice, clean commodities for mostly Michigan markets. So dual stream is a policy decision. We want to maintain really good relationships with our end markets. If you don't have an end market for your recycling, you have no recycling program. So making that connection in what we call the circular economy here in Michigan of the consumer that buys said thing to following that material all the way through our recycling facility, and where does that material end up to be made into new things in new places. Next slide. Building relationships is key in our market development for the circular economy. Emmet County Recycling is the connection between the consumer and the manufacturer in the circular economy. So just to give you a description of the circular economy, because we throw this word around a lot here and in the recycling world. So a circular economy is based on the principles of designing out waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in use, and regenerating natural systems. That's a quote from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And so for us, the circular economy is about seeking out local markets, building relationships, and providing good, clean commodities to manufacturers here in Michigan, but really throughout the continental United States, as well as Southern Canada. We have lots of plastics processing partners in Southern Canada as well. As a public recycling program, we operate with transparency and we share what happens to your or our recycling. We update and publish our markets regularly as changes occur. And this is part of what we call the real recycling promise. As a public sector entity, we try to operate with that level of transparency because we want people to understand why we're asking you to keep it separated, why we ask you to bag your plastic bags and recycle them with paper boxes and bags. And so all of that translates to a system that is more sustainable and resilient, even in the face of markets that ebb and flow all the time with our commodity sales. So each commodity in our dual stream system has a story. So whether you're talking about plastic bags or cartons or PET clear water bottles or aluminum cans, all of these have a story of how they get processed in our facility and where that material ends up to be manufactured into a new product. And so difficult to recycle materials, not if you're persistent. So we've really captured a spirit of looking at the material flow as it comes through our transfer station and recycling center, know what is out in that municipal solid waste stream, and kind of systematically tackling those materials based on their composition in the municipal waste stream. And so finding opportunities to be able to recycle asphalt shingles, which we had a program that was very successful for over 6 years between 2008 and 2015. We were able to recycle shingles almost about 1,000 tons, between 800 and 1,000 tons a year. And so hoping to bring those materials back. But if you don't have a solid end market for those materials, you're gonna not be able to recycle those hard to recycle materials. So always looking for those new opportunities. With Next Cycle Michigan, we've been able to really do deep dives on different kinds of materials and help other programs throughout the state of Michigan kind of bring up new recycling opportunities for their communities and hopefully for the state of Michigan as well. But we are not alone in this endeavor. So that's the thing about the circular economy. Once you start building those relationships and you say, well, we have a certain amount of said thing, we know that this is a popular product out in the world. When you're talking about Starbucks cups or milk cartons or juice cartons or ice cream cartons, those are all things that we've been able to recover, building relationships with local mills that can take those products and make, in this context, toilet tissue paper out of cartons here in Michigan. So that's a wonderful story, and all of those commodities have similar exciting stories. From consumer messaging on what and how to recycle and their end product, Emmet County Recycling is the connection in the circular economy. So if you look at the circular supply chain graphic that I have there, we're really intercepting the product, the consumer when they're at the point of consumption. So if you're at the grocery store buying food, hopefully you're thinking about how you're going to make that food so that it doesn't go into the crisper in the bottom of your refrigerator where all good food goes to die. Or you're out shopping for your child and their lunches, and you know that juice cartons are recyclable with our program, but the Capri Sun juice pouches made out of Mylar are not. So working with, we're right there. And a lot of my friends will say, Lindsay, I'll go to the garbage can and I'll be like, what am I going to do with this? What would Lindsay do? WWLD. So just having that very impact on our consumer and our Emmet County residents to be thinking about how they consume and reducing and reusing over recycling. Like, you have to remember that those 3 R's are in a certain order for a certain reason. Okay, next slide. So here we have an interesting graphic that I have been using lately. As part of my role here at Emmet County Recycling, I also sit on the Michigan Organics Council, which is part of the Michigan Recycling Coalition, but it's also our state chapter for the United States Composting Council. So this is a graphic from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, a really good resource that I'm going to recommend, and maybe we could send out some links about some of their resources as well. 50% of the municipal garbage set out at the curb is compostable. So when we look at your typical 30-gallon trash bag, which in Emmet County, it costs you $3 to throw away a 30-gallon bag of trash at our facility. But if we look at the fact that 50% of that 30-gallon trash bag, 21% is food scraps alone. And you would think that maybe in institutions or farms or manufacturers would be the largest creators of food waste in the municipal waste stream, but it's not. It's the household. So for almost every 4 bags of garbage that you are going to the for every 4 bags of groceries you bring home, it's almost like you're throwing out one of them, because that's the equivalent of how much food waste a household wastes in an average shopping trip. So it's a significant number, and it's very helpful to see, like, when we're talking about municipal solid waste stream, why does the garbage stink at the transfer station? It stinks because there's a lot of food waste in there. And this is going to be our next, no pun intended, low-hanging fruit for diversion in our communities and elsewhere. Next slide. So here is our food scrap collection and composting program. This is part of our commercial recycling program that I lead. And so we have a yard waste and food scrap composting facility. We're making a beautiful finished compost product. We sell it in bulk and bagged. We work with local farms. We have our compost tested at one of the standard kind of compost testing facilities in Michigan, and we are in Illinois, and we publish those results on our website every year. We are providing service to businesses, and residents can do drop off of their food scraps at farmers markets and several of our commercial customers. So providing comprehensive services and opportunities for our residents and businesses to be able to recycle and compost more. Next slide. And that's pretty much it for me. There's so much to share, and hopefully there'll be other opportunities. We are offering, as part of the Great Michigan Compost Tour coming up the week of September the 11th through the 16th, Emmet County Recycling is hosting a tour on Friday, September the 15th at 10 o'clock in the morning. And we're partnering with our local tribal chicken farm and emerging composters. So we look forward to being able to give tours of our facility to anybody that's interested, especially elected officials and decision makers, as we move forward with materials management planning here in the state of Michigan. And now I'm going to turn it over to the illustrious and wonderful Karen O'Brien from the Michigan Recycling Coalition.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay. Great presentation as usual. My name is Karen O'Brien. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Recycling Coalition, and for about 42 years, we have been representing recycling professionals and working together to grow recycling in Michigan. And I think you can see that we've been making great progress lately. We got funding back in 2018 for recycling programs all over the state, of which many of these programs have been funded by. And of late, we are talking about changes to Michigan Solid Waste Law, Part 115, and what county planning really means. Next slide, please. I think it's important to just give you some context around why we plan for solid waste in counties. Back in about 1987 a hauler, a trash hauler out of New York, decided that he could, get rid of a bunch of garbage much more cheaply by going to another landfill. So he loaded his garbage barge up and took it, down the East Coast, stopping at every port to see if he could unload his garbage. He stopped at every port, went down all the way to Belize, and no one wanted his garbage. He ended up all the way back where he started, disposing of this in New York, and it really caused a firestorm. And it was what really caused the federal government to require states to develop solid waste plans so that we wouldn't have this problem with where our waste was going to go. Michigan took that seriously, and rather than developing a whole state plan, they thought it important for each county to decide their kind of future for themselves. So we now have county planning. Next slide, please. The previous version of county planning was really built upon making sure we had disposal capacity to deal with 100% of our waste. And because of this policy, we have kind of a proliferation of landfills in Michigan. We have more landfill capacity than we really need, and it's been keeping the price of landfilling kind of artificially low, and it causes a lot of we get 25% of the garbage that is disposed of in Michigan comes from out of state, primarily Canada, because it's cheaper than to dispose of it where they are. So about 70 different stakeholder groups got together and have been working with the state over 4 years, and have did some rethinking about this policy. And now the policy that passed last December is really built around creating capacity for all materials management. And so composting, recycling, and all the other things we can productively do with our waste. Next slide, please. So we're talking right now, and this county planning is probably one of the key aspects of this whole Part 115 solid waste law change, because with every county planning in Michigan, the conversations that are going to have to occur around the state to elevate this very invisible topic is really going to help everybody. We see that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to talk about developing regional capacity to manage materials productively. But at the base level, the things that the counties need to understand right now is that the state requires a county plan. And so all counties will have to have a materials management plan. It doesn't mean that the county has to produce it, but it will have to have a plan. And it looks like Eagle will call on counties to plan in late September 23. So next month. Counties will have 6 months to deliberate, to talk to their neighbors, to explore opportunities for regional planning, or try to figure out who they want involved in their county planning activities. But they'll have 6 months to respond back to Eagle to say, yep, we're going to do the planning, or we're going to work with our neighboring county to develop a multi-county plan, or some semblance of how this work is going to be done. All in all, though, the county planning process will take about 3 years once a county commits to doing it. There's a very prescribed process to this county plan, really to make sure that there's input from all of the kind of interested stakeholders representing the variety of people that need to be represented throughout this process. And so at the end of the process, a majority of municipalities within that local government distinction, whether it's the county or the region or a multi-county, will have to sign off on this plan within 120 days or Eagle will consider the plan for approval. So there is a timeline and a schedule for getting everybody's buy-in. But ultimately, we do want to get people's buy-in because this is a plan that should serve the many. Next slide, please. So in essence, these plans will do a variety of things. There's going to be a plan format to make it as easy as possible for counties to hand over this information and to work within the counties to develop a vision for the recycling plan. But ultimately, the plan will inventory what already exists, what kind of material recovery facilities are there and what their capacity is to establish a recycling rate. You'll have to like know what's happening in your community, and then you'll have to establish your own plan for advancing recycling and meeting the goals. The goal of the plan is really to increase recycling to help the state achieve a 45% recycling rate. And the plan will have you document your goals and then how you are going to meet those goals. They'll also have you establish or make plans for how you are going to meet a benchmark recycling standard, which we'll talk about in more detail in just a moment. But ultimately, this planning process is about making sure that there's a process in place for new facility development. These are facilities, composting facilities, landfills in some cases, MRFs, can be controversial in the community. And we want to make sure that they are considered assets of a community, not burdens on the community. And in doing this, this whole plan is built to make sure that facilities are being put in place that are wanted and needed, and there's a demonstrated capacity and use for those facilities in the county or the region. And then ultimately, this plan will document your implementation strategy for moving forward. And continued funding will somewhat be based upon your progress or the county's progress toward meeting these goals. That's the simple nutshell of what will be in the county plan, in your plan. Next slide. There is something called a minimum benchmark recycling standard. And this is where we see in many ways that the rubber meets the road, because we can establish a 45% recycling rate, but if everybody in Michigan doesn't have access to recycling opportunities, it's almost impossible to make that goal. And so for communities over 5,000, they'll have to provide curbside recycling in some way through those communities or to those communities. And the last three are really about drop-off sites. We've got quite a lot of time to develop these drop-off sites, but they serve both rural and urban counties. There's a certain strategy for counties under 100,000 and another strategy for communities or counties over 100,000. At least one drop off for every 10,000 residents under 100,000, and at least one drop off for every 50,000 residents in counties over 500,000. This really gives people not only access to kind of traditional recycling opportunities for, paper, plastic, glass, metal, but it also gives opportunities for hard to recycle materials, as Lindsay was talking about, mattresses and paint and carpet and plastic bags and that kind of thing. So these are kind of an important function of the planning process and create kind of that basement on which you build a successful recycling program in your county. Next slide, please. So the funding for county planning, it really happens in 5-year cycles. The planning cycle itself is a 5-year cycle. The first 3 years of the cycle is considered kind of the active portion. For all 5 years, the county will get $60,000 to support this work. For the first 3 years, the county will get an additional 50 cents per capita with a cap of about $300,000. So for 600,000 people. So this funding is what you can use to develop your plans. If you can develop your plans kind of quickly and efficiently, then remaining funds can be used to implement your plans. And so it makes sense to get as much information out of your community and to envision your recycling goal as possible early on in the process, so that you can take as little time as needed to actually plan this out. I want to say it's really important to note that planning is not the end goal here. What the end goal is to create a recycling system that works for your communities. Planning is just the way that is kind of your enforceable way of making this happen. If you are going to work together with other counties in a region or just with another county, you have the ability to get an additional $10,000 per year to develop those multi-county plans, because coordination amongst multiple counties does take more time and effort. And I think my last slide is really about the requirement to have a certain level of representation on these committees. There's a whole prescribed process, as I've said before, but it's really important that you fill out your DPA, your designated planning agency, and your solid waste management planning committee with these representatives, so that everybody that's involved in this work in your county or region is at the table, because these are long-term plans that we want to make sure we get right. So that's what I have for you. Let's see, Matthew Farrar from Muskegon County is on deck now to talk about Muskegon County's government role here. Matthew, are you ready?
Yes, I'm
There you
here.
go.
Yes. All right. Thanks a lot, Tanya. There's some very hard acts to follow. I cannot turn my camera on because I live in southeast Fruitport Township, where, well, let's just say we do not have fiber internet. So thanks for everybody. Karen, thanks for explaining that. I was going to get into that a little bit, but you covered it from top to bottom. Real quick, I know I'm supposed to discuss the county's role, but I just want to briefly overview what the county is doing currently. We have a bi-weekly household hazardous waste drop-off in the city of Muskegon. We tried a few years ago to open one up in the north side of the county, because really Muskegon County is two metropolitan areas. It's Muskegon and the surrounding communities, and then Whitehall and the communities up there. So we have the board anyway has a strong desire to make sure that we're including both. So in addition to household hazardous waste, we have a tire recycling program where we just in, I think, May, recycled 4,000 tires. And we do these events all throughout the communities. And many of the people on here today have either had their own or participate with us. Goodwill has been an excellent partner with the County of Muskegon. We have 2 annual community recycling events where we recycle tires. In addition to the events out in the community, we recycle household hazardous waste material and electronics, and that's where Goodwill has been the leader in recycling electronics. In addition to all this, and Linda, thank you for the very kind words. One of the things that I've observed about Muskegon County, unlike Emmet County and these other counties that we've been watching, is everyone has their own thing. As has been mentioned earlier, Republic Waste Services used to have a community drop-off center here in Muskegon, in the city of Muskegon, but it was located right in the center of Muskegon Township and the city of Muskegon, who both have excellent curbside recycling programs. So they shut it down because there was not a lot of use for that. They were only getting like 3 tons of trash a month, or I'm sorry, of recycling a month. So as we move forward, we see the county's role as wanting to work with all these groups and combine everybody's efforts and see what we can do to make something work for everybody. Currently, we're simply just a landfill. We have nothing to do with collection. Some communities franchise it, some communities have their own. That's our main goal, is to see how we can sit back, watch what people are doing, get everybody together to make this work for everybody. Recycling is critical for every reason that you all have stated. I believe our Board of Commissioners supports this, and we're ready to move forward, working with all of you. And I don't want to be too brief. I can't see the slides. I only have this cell phone. Going back to the update of the plan. Yes, as Karen just mentioned, we are working with 4 other counties to do a regional plan. West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission, who is our planner of record, is moving forward with that plan. We've had a couple meetings with the other counties to get this thing completed. And yes, as Tanya has pointed out, we do want to serve on this leadership team and really be the kind of, not so much the quarterback or the point guard, but we want to make sure that we're all moving in the same direction, at least here in Muskegon County. Wade Vandenbosch, she's our Public Works Director. Do you have anything to add to this? There's really a lot going on. I'm trying to be cognizant of time and not to repeat what everyone else has talked about. But Wade, you got anything to add to this?
I will say that we are currently expanding our solid waste facility. We expect that the new expansion area will be open October 30th or earlier, so this is timely. Along with the Part 115 rules, this is timely, and we certainly support the work that Tanya and WEMAC has put into this.
And just to point out to just a lot of other folks, along with myself and WEMAC, we have a lot of folks who are enthusiastic recycling cheerleaders who've been with us for a couple of years. So, but thank you very much, Wade and Matt.
So just one more thing. One of my commissioners is here with us today, Commissioner Hovey Wright. I just want to reach out to her to see if she has anything to add to this discussion.
I'm not exactly sure she is.
Looks like she's muted.
Marcia, you're muted.
I know Marcia,
Yeah.
Commissioner Hovey Wright's been a huge supporter of not just recycling, but all things sustainability since she's been on our commission, even at the House of Representatives. So if she has anything to add, I'd like to hear from her.
I don't have anything to add. I'm picking up ideas and good models from like Emmet County and some of the other, sort of smaller projects. So hopefully we'll be able to expand on what we're able to do.
Yeah. So I was just asked a question, what other counties are working with us? So Newaygo, I believe Mason. Oh shoot, they're all my friends and I forget what county they work in. Lake County. There's at least 4 other counties that we have met with Wimser-Dick working on a regional plan. And they are all in our MPO or Metropolitan Planning Organization that Wimser-Dick serves. So it was an obvious collaboration to work with them.
I think we do need to move along a little bit more quickly.
Okay.
And so thank you very much, Matt. And
thank you, Tanya. We appreciate you leading the way on this discussion.
Well, as I've mentioned to folks, I think recycling is what got me changed from an elementary teacher to an environmental activist all the way back to 1989. So with that, I think we need to keep an eye on the time, and I don't want to rush Doug or Matt.
That's all right.
Or it's okay. It's entirely okay. Or our time for questions. So Doug, if you would like to get started.
I'd be glad to do that. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And I'm honored to be in this group. And I'm here, I guess, with an invitation to folks that are listening or will be listening. And before I do that, just real briefly, I wanted to let you know why I'm here. I'm a retired community educator. I grew up I'm a proud graduate of Fruitport High School, and that's where I got my first taste of any kind of activism around the environment. And it carried me through the 32 years I lived in Kalamazoo. And we always intended to come back home. My wife, Kim, and I wanted to come back to Muskegon. And when we did, we were able to get involved in a number of different efforts that, reflect the care that people have for this community. Now, everybody on this call, everybody that's watching this call probably has reasons to be involved. And I just wanted to share my three. I bragged at my number one job now that I'm retired is being so the work I do is important to me because of Laura, Lucas, and Simon, my three grandchildren. So Sam, we go to the next slide. My invitation to you is to be part of the leadership group that is going to guide this program. Tanya mentioned it early on in this evening's program that we were putting together a team of, that represents our community in the leadership of the community, but also the representation for passion and interest in this particular subject. So the leadership team is required to be part of this group. And we're going to develop that implementation plan to drive the study. We hope that we'll be able to lay out the action, the timelines, the milestones, the performance indicators, the things that were mentioned earlier in the program, that this team is going to be a part of that. But mostly we really want to actively engage the community. So I'm asking folks that would like to be part of this effort to join us as part of the leadership team. Go ahead, Sam. These are some of the folks that are sitting with us now that have said they would be part of our leadership team. We have educators, we have activists, we have folks that are doing this, certainly part of their job, but it's also part of the things that they care about. And we hope that we will see your name on this as well. And we also want to thank WEMEAC for the guidance and the work that we're going to be doing with them as we move the leadership team forward. Go ahead. If you'd like to get involved, there are ways to get involved with this recycling effort. I sit and listen to the things that Emmet County are doing, or up in Cedar Creek, and the things that are going on. And I think that we can be a leader in this effort in Muskegon County if we can find the people who care with their expertise and their passion to be a part of it. So if you'd like to learn more about the leadership team, you're certainly welcome to contact me. The link there to WEMEAC will give you more information as well. But hopefully you can reach out, and we can reach out to you, and we can get you involved. Go ahead. I pulled this phrase out of the feasibility study because it spoke to me, and it spoke to the idea that I think that we can make this happen, but we need the right people. We need the right kind of resources, and I think you've seen tonight the kind of resources that are going to be behind this effort. And so I hope that, again, that the leadership team will provide that drive to a well thought out program, but we need your help. So please be a part of us. And I think that's my last slide. So I'd like to pass it on to Matthew Fletcher from Eagle, and I'll let you take it away, Matt.
Thanks, Doug. I really like that call to action. It's one of the things I like working with Tanya. You're always ready to organize and get people to support them in the work that you all do. And there's nowhere that I'd rather be tonight than with all of you, being on the call with Lindsay and Nick and Kieran and all the people on this call. you really do have a team of advocates working for you because we want to see you succeed. I'm Matt Flechter, Recycling Market Development Specialist with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. And for the past couple decades, I've worked to make sure those materials that you put at the curb make their way into new products made here in Michigan. And I love the stories that Nick has told and the connections that Lindsay talked about related to making sure that those materials that we put at the curb do find their way into new products, because as Lindsay said, there's no sense collecting something if you don't have it in market. Otherwise, you're just collecting trash. And thinking about that question that just came up in the chat about how do we attract those businesses? One of the ways you attract those businesses is you be the place that cares, that knows the importance of the circular economy. You tell your story about the place to be, the way where you want to site your business. If you're in the circular economy space, if you're making cool glass products out of glass waste, is you want to be in a community that cares about these things. And you want to be in a community that supports it. They want to be in a community that is working to grow the collection, processing, and end use system. So next slide, please. So what are the economic benefits of reaching a 45% recycling rate in Michigan? We know that by evaluating what the economic benefits are, we know that there's 138,000 jobs in Michigan that will be in place when we reach that 45%. We know that there's $9 billion of total annual labor income and $33 billion of economic output. These are big numbers. These rival transportation and tourism. We don't always think about the circular economy as a sector. We think about transportation and tourism. But think about it. Everything you have, everything you're touching, look around, from your shoes to your ceiling, everything is going to either be put in a landfill, or it's going to be circulating in the economy, turning into new products. So when you think about everything, oh my gosh, this is a huge business opportunity. And people are paying attention to that. We're seeing that change that we've all wanted to see since that garbage barge ended up in the landfill and we said need to try recycling. We're seeing that change. Next slide, please. When at Eagle and with Next Cycle Michigan, we talk about best practices. We talk about collection and funding and supportive policies and education. Think about the processing facilities that need to be in place. And we think about those end markets. We are talking about a complex system that needs collection, processing, and end use. It also needs supportive decision makers. So decision makers that are learning about what policies work and what's going to work for your community, your specific needs in your community. And I noticed Jeff Grichmerick was on, and he is a great resource. He's on our team. He's a recycling specialist, and he is going to be a great resource to you as you look at when you're developing your plan and you're working with that regional economic development agency, and you're working across those counties. What's going to work specifically for Muskegon County? And I think we've got a lot of really good models that we can share with you as you're developing those plans. Next slide, please. So we've looked at what we're doing at Eagle through Next Cycle Michigan is we're looking at the data. We're looking to see where that current infrastructure is. I'm happy to report our recycling rate has climbed up to 21%. We started at about 15% when this recycling initiative started. We're seeing that growth. So those 8 tons that Linda mentioned, or the glass that was mentioned earlier by Nick, those are adding up in aggregate to real change in Michigan. The total amount that Michigan recycles equals the same amount that would fill Spartan Stadium and Ford Field and the Big House. So think about those 8 tons that came out of Cedar Creek. That's in there. That is an important part of the system. And you should be commended for all the work that you've accomplished so far. And I can't wait to see all the more work that is going to happen through this planning process. Next slide, please. So with Next Cycle Michigan, Tanya mentioned that the work that she's doing, the grant that came out of it, there's a next step, and we've been supporting with Karen O'Brien and others on this call, supporting the development of your plans through as a team through the Next Cycle Michigan project. And we're really happy to have played the small role in being able to convene and support you and getting you the information you need and helping to fund the technical assistance and also obviously the grant making that was already mentioned before. And what we're really doing is we're creating opportunities for investment. We know that this circular economy is not going to be built on just local government decisions. It's with local government and the other businesses and the businesses that are going to site in your communities to use those materials. So we want to create those conditions where those local businesses can thrive, and you are creating those conditions for your residents to thrive as well by providing them opportunities to, instead of putting that trash in the hole in the ground, keep it circulating in the economy. Next slide, please. So we have been seeing the impact, and I'll cut this short since we're going a little bit long, but I would encourage you to go to Next Cycle Michigan, see those businesses, see those programs, learn. We've got some best practices on there. We've got some stories to share, and we will definitely be writing up the story of what BMEAC is doing and what Muskegon is doing to be able to share that, so you can be seen. You can be seen as the leaders that you are working on these issues. So I want you to keep that in mind when you're working on these things. We will be telling the story of how successful you will be. Next slide, please. So what does success look like? It means positive impact to all communities, all diverse communities, all across your county, filling those gaps that we know exist, attracting that investment and the talent, increasing the access and infrastructure and growing those in markets, and really growing that robust circular economy in Michigan. I really thank you, Tanya, for putting this together and allowing me to be part of this. And I look forward to working with the group as we continue forward.
Well, I want to thank every one of the presenters. We were very fortunate to have such expertise both locally and then all our friends at the state level. Emmet County, Matt and Jeffrey Kirchick mentioned, and Karen O'Brien. It really is about partnerships and collaborating and building on the good things that are going on. And I think I was just so excited to have our local success stories on this webinar, to get those stories out there. Because we have local success stories and we have more than what we have presented here. But then also we're so fortunate to have the help from Eagle. This effort is funded by Eagle, and we're helpful to have our Next Cycle folks advising us. I don't know how we can go wrong with all the help that we have received, and it has been valuable help indeed. And so want to thank folks for attending, and certainly for more information, people can contact me at my phone number, at my email address, and also the entire recycling project, which includes the full feasibility study report, which I just touched on at the beginning, where I talked about. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Where we it's a full-fledged report that talks about everything that we've been presenting here, but also the recommendations of the group of local representatives of municipalities and community organizations who have said, we think these are the things that we want to see Muskegon County do, which includes looking at additional recycling infrastructure, making sure that we have good educational campaigns going on, collaborative efforts building on the collaboration that we have going on, but also establishing, to start off things, a leadership team. And we're very lucky to have Doug Wood with all his experience and his motivation. Certainly his grandchildren, which is what motivated me years ago, was my children and now my grandchildren. Very glad to have him step up to be our first interim chair of the leadership team that will help to fulfill the vision of our feasibility study, and as we make sure to connect that to what the county intends to do going forward. So you can find that information at winiac.org under our Lakeshore Programs page, and then Improving Recycling Muskegon County. And we are asking for feedback on our feasibility study. We will make sure to incorporate that into the report, and we're asking for folks to fill out the survey as well. Do we have that link as well, or is this our final slide?
The survey link and feasibility study can both be found if you click on the link in this.
Exactly. There's the executive summary, the full report, and the survey. And we'd be grateful if folks would help circulate that throughout the county. And I would be remiss if I did not thank Samantha Ripstra, who has competently managed this entire webinar and series of presentations, and who has been a distinct asset in this recycling work.